Morning and welcome to the Committee of Adjustment hearing for Rural Panel 3. We are a City of Ottawa quasi judicial tribunal that holds public hearings to consider Planning Act applications, including minor variants to the zoning requirements and consent to sever land. Our hearings are now in person at Ben Franklin Place, 101 Center Point Drive. We also enable remote participation by video conferencing for our registered speakers. We are live streaming on YouTube and the video will be archived and available for future viewing by the public. My name is Bill Hunter. I'll be chairing today's hearings and you can address me by my name or as chair. With me are panel members to my left, Jocelyn Chander, to my far left, Martin Vervoit, to my right, Beth Henderson, and my far right, Terry Otto. Listed on the agenda and appearing on screen from time to time are the applications we'll hear today. For the sake of efficiency, I may deal with the agenda items in a different order. Panel members have reviewed the planning reports and any written submissions in support or in opposition to each of the applications. Today we'll hear any oral submissions relating to the applications. The panel may ask for a brief presentation of an application, followed by questions for the applicant and city planning staff. We will then hear from members of the public who have registered to speak, and we may also have questions for them. Finally, the applicant, who has the burden of proof, will have an opportunity to make final comments and reply. Please address your comments to me as the chair, starting with your name and spelling if necessary, and your municipal address for the record. All presentations are limited to 5 minutes, and exceptions will be at my discretion. At the end of the hearing, the panel may either make an oral decision or we may reserve our decision, which means it won't be delivered today. In either case, and within 10 days, the Committee of Adjustment will send the official written decision and reasons for it to all the parties, participants, and anyone else who has requested a copy. Anyone have any questions? Okay, then we'll start. Declarations of interest.
I have a declaration of interest for severances B00245 or 46247. Sorry, they're consents, and that's at 5260 Long Island.
Thank you very much. Any other declarations of interest? No. Okay, thank you. Previous hearings, October 3rd and October 17th, we had minutes of those. Can we confirm those, please? Yes, thank you. Now we have quite a few adjournments and unopposed applications. What I want to do is to start with the adjournments first and deal with those. The first request for an adjournment is 5,000 Ferry Road, and actually 5,060 Ferry Road is also requested for an adjournment. Planning has asked for that. Could I have planning make some comments on that, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So planning staff is asking for an adjournment on this one just because we haven't received an EIS in support of the application. So the two proposed severed lots are both within a natural heritage core area. And there are some woodlands on the property. So we'd like to just see a scoped EIS from the applicant in support of this before we can make any recommendations.
And that's the same case for 550 Ferry Road and 5,000 Ferry Road. There's
That's
no
correct.
EIS.
Yeah.
It's the same reason for both of them.
Same reason, yeah.
Okay. Does the applicant is the applicant here? Yes, sir. Would you like to come down here, please? And we'd like to hear from you, sir. If you could turn on the microphone, I guess there's a button there you can press. Good, it's on. Okay. And you must be William James O'Rourke.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And you are the owner of the property?
Yes.
And would you like to speak to whether this matter should be adjourned or whether it should proceed today?
And I think what you're talking about is the environmental impact statement.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, the environmental, when I realized that I needed an environmental impact statement, it was too late in the year to do it. It was, I think, September 15th or something. So at that point in time, we couldn't do it until the spring now, so. But if that's the only holdup, I don't know whether you can proceed or not.
Well, I think planning, in order to evaluate it, has to have an EIS. Is that correct, planning?
Oh, that's correct.
Yes. That being the case, then it's hard for planning to give us comments as to, and yourself, sir, as to the EIS and the effects, if any, and that type of thing. When can an EIS be done in the winter?
I think for like species surveys and that sort of thing, we need to do it sort of in the summer, spring, that sort of thing.
So are you okay if we adjourn this, perhaps sine die?
Yeah.
Sine die means that we're not setting a date.
Yeah. No,
Is that okay, planning? Other members of the board, any comments? Yes, Mr. Otto.
You said scope EIS. That's not a full blown EIS. So could a scope not possibly be done at this time of the year by the owner himself, or does he have to have a professional do it?
I feel unfortunately I couldn't really speak to the specifics on that. I'd have to speak to one of our environmental planners on it, but my understanding is it would have to be done in the summer to get the full range of species that are present on the site.
But if it can be done in the winter because it's a scope EIS, planning would be able to determine that and advise Mr. O'Rourke, and he can have it done in the winter and come back sooner rather than later. Is that fair to say?
I think so. Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah. Okay. Do you understand, sir, that?
sorry, I did. So I can do it myself, or?
No. Mr. Otto said scope EIS could perhaps be done in the winter. And
Oh, okay.
that's what we're talking about. If it can, and I don't know that it can, planning staff would have to confer with you,
Okay.
whoever you have to do the EIS, obviously. But if it can be done in the winter, then you can bring this back to us sooner,
Oh, sure. Yeah.
prior to the summer. If it has to be in the summer, then it'll be in the summer.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else you wish to add, Mr. O'Rourke?
No, I think.
That's it? Yes, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So just for clarity's sake, when you were advised that it was September 15th, so it was too late to do an EIS, who provided that information to you?
Jack Graham, I believe.
It was one of the planners at the city?
I recall it was Jack Graham that
Okay.
sent me the email that it had to be done by.
Okay,
Actually, sorry. He told me I had to have an environmental impact statement done, and he gave me a list of people to contact to do it. I contacted the people who were on one of the ladies who were on the list. She told me that it had to be done between those certain dates.
and
I asked Jack, so she suggested that I ask Jack if, because I think at that time it was September 14th. She asked me to ask Jack if, because it was within, she could do it within the next week or two. Apparently that was not acceptable, so.
okay, so I think the direction that the chair is suggesting, which may work out for you, is rather than adjourn it sine die with no date set for another hearing, which would mean you'd have to pay an additional fee to have it recirculated. If we stand this down for a short period of time, when you contact your environmental consultants, make sure you are clear with them that it is a scoped EIS that's being requested, not a full EIS, because that may change the period of time in which they can do it.
Okay,
It's a EIS light version, I think would be fair. So you need to be clear with them that you're looking for a scoped EIS rather than an EIS.
Okay, so that's all we need then is a scope.
To confirm with planning, that's what I understood.
That's correct, yeah.
Okay,
So a scope is enough rather than full EIS?
I believe a scope would be acceptable in this case, yes.
Okay, okay. Yes, go ahead, Ms. Henderson.
I think it would be a good idea if the applicant received almost the terms of reference of what's required in any type of EIS, so that scoped could mean different things to different people. I wouldn't want you to go down a road that is still not going to be satisfactory to the city planning department. So I'm assuming that you can reach out to the city planning and obtain almost the terms of reference of what needs to be completed in that scoped EIS. Just so, you know, you're not spinning your wheels.
yeah. So who would I be in contact with in the planning committee?
You'd be in contact with me.
Okay,
One thing for legal, if it's adjourned sine die, does that mean the applicant has to pay the fees over again?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there is a fee to recirculate the application. It's not the full initial application fee. The current fee to recirculate is $662.
Right, okay. So if we set a date to have it come back, then there's no further fee, is that correct?
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
How do we pick a date? Any thoughts?
My suggestion would be to give the applicant till January to get it all sorted out, and you can come back in January and see where you've gotten to.
okay,
If it's not sorted out, sir, then we could adjourn it again to another date, but by that time, I think you should know better as to what you need, how soon you can get it, and all those details, and work with the planning staff, please, on that.
okay.
Yes, Mr. Verver.
I would suggest if we're gonna adjourn it to a fixed date, we'd probably be wise to move it into February. January meeting will probably be really busy. And he'll probably need a couple of months anyway to sort this out.
You okay with that,
Yep,
Mr.
I'm fine
Verver?
with that. Yep,
Okay, what are the dates in February?
Mr. Chair, the options would be February 6th, or the second meeting in February would be February 20th.
6th of the 20th. Do the 20th, February the 20th, panel members? Everybody in favor? Is that fine with you, Mr. O'Rourke? Adjourn till February the 20th?
okay,
Okay, so that's carried in February the 20th, it's adjourned to. Thank you very much.
great, thank you. Could you send me an email just so I have your contact?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes, okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you. The next adjournment is 6783 Fernbank. Planning is asking for an adjournment. I wonder if you could, first of all, is there somebody here?
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair.
Okay, there you are.
Yes.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. It's Tracy Zander from Zander Plan. We have received the staff request for an adjournment, and the comments are really related to the environmental impact study. I have discussed with the project biologist, but we haven't quite been able to prepare a response. So my client is agreeable to an adjournment, ideally just to your next hearing date, so that we can come back with a response and probably a revised sketch with building envelopes, which I think we can address the staff comments. So we're agreeable to an adjournment, ideally just to your next hearing date, if that's possible, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Planning, is that acceptable?
I believe so, yeah.
Yes. Members of the panel, any comments, questions? Everybody in favor adjourning to the next date? What is the next date, please?
Mr. Chair, the next date is December 12th.
December the 12th, Ms. Zander.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Fine, so it's adjourned to December the 12th. Thank you. The next adjournment is 6 white cedar. There's a request to adjourn at sine die. Is there somebody here, Mr. Reno, Jay Reno, to speak to that? Either live or in person?
Hello, committee members, Mr. Chair.
Hello. Planning staff is asking if this matter be adjourned sine die.
I disagree with that decision. I think we should set a date for a few reasons.
Okay. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, so this is so you may recall from the last one, this is the 4th committee hearing that I've attended now. Still not really getting a definition from the city. I was supposed to meet with the zoning plans examiner and Jack Graham. However, I wasn't informed until last week that Jack Graham is no longer with the department. So I was unable to meet with him to define this. And if you wouldn't mind just sharing my screen for a moment, if that's possible.
I think it probably is. Just give me a minute here.
Yep. And then I went through the other issues that were with the zoning plans examiner. They had concerns with the front setbacks, which I confirmed is not an issue. It's over the allowable amount, as well as there is one outstanding issue, which is the gross floor area, which would have to be added in as an additional minor variance item, which we have no issues with. But still, I think the biggest slowdown in this is still the definition of a dormer, which in the planning report itself that they identified in figure 1 is identical to the proposal. So the example they put in the thing or in the planning report says an example of photo of a dormer. The dormer is secondary to the main roof line and does not meet the lower wall. So I have done that as shown in the drawings. I can't share my screen, but that's all right. But the walls are separate. So I asked definition and they said because it comprises the entirety of the second floor, it is not a dormer. But I've asked clarification, what constitutes a dormer? If they can provide me with the information that how far I can recess it, if there is a limitation, because from what I've been told, it is at the discretion of the individuals in the planning departments. However, it is not up to the discretion of individuals. It is up to the code and the bylaws that are stated. If there's no definitions, there's no explanation, there's no parameters, it cannot be up to individual department decisions.
Okay, I wonder if we could hear from planning. Planning staff requests an application be adjourned sine die to allow the applicant time to confirm which minor variances will be required in order to proceed. Are you able to clarify that somewhat?
Yes, so I've been in contact with building code services who are more of the ones who look into the definitions of what all this is.
Yes.
And we were able to provide additional information to the applicant on what was being requested and potential minor variances that would be needed. So we just want to give the applicant time to adjust their application to meet those requirements.
It doesn't meet those right now as it stands?
As it stands, yeah.
Mr. Reno, would you like to comment on that?
I still don't have a definition to why and what parameters and what bylaw references it is not complying with. So this is now, and there's also a concern with that's why I was going to request an adjournment until February 6th, because I have to meet with my client now because we've now missed the construction deadline. Now that this is the 4th hearing and I applied for this minor variance in June, it has affected a lot of time, resources, and the functionality of the actual project. So there may be I have to see what the client wishes to do at this point and how they wish to proceed with grievances.
So are you saying you want to adjourn to February the 6th or not?
Yes, that is correct.
February the 6th. Members of the panel, Ms. Chandler, Mr. Vervoort.
Just had a question. I believe there was a reference made to the fact that there has to be a minor variance for the gross floor area. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. That is the one minor variance that does stand from the building code department that they added into the the review planning report.
So this is gonna have to be recirculated in any event if there's a new variance. So I'm not sure adjourning to a specific date is gonna be helpful.
Well, that's another thing I would like to discuss, is that possibly waiving the fee for the additional variance and recirculation, as this is now the fourth planning report and not one of the planning reports has had the gross floor area. That was actually identified by me after I had a planning review that said, no, there was no concerns. And I have the written planning report saying they have no concerns with the proposal. So it wasn't identified in the original consultation. It wasn't identified in the past 4 hearing planning reports. I just found out about a deviation letter last week, even though I had another plans examiner look at it in July that said there was no notes on the file.
Well, I think, I don't want to speak for everybody, but typically, like, we're gonna have to recirculate. That's the policy of the committee. If there's an additional minor variance, as far as the recirculation fee goes, that would have to be a written request to the committee for consideration, so.
Noted, committee member.
Have we got the ability, if there's a written request, to waive that fee?
Mr. Chair, I can't speak to the consultation with planning staff. The direction from council is that the Committee of Adjustment recover all costs associated with processing the application, including the recirculation costs. But as a member of report indicated, if a written request is submitted, it'll be considered by the Secretary Treasurer.
Okay, so probably we should adjourn it sine die, because he's gonna have to reapply anyway for that one. And he can, he being Mr. Reno, could provide a written request to waive that fee. And then we could consider that. Is that fair to say? Does that make sense from staff's point of view?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that makes sense. And the cost to reactivate and the cost to recirculate are it's the same, just for clarity.
Yes, okay. Okay, so we can adjourn this sine die. All panel members in favor? Any questions, Yes, you have a comment, Mr. Chairman? No, okay. It's adjourned sine die then, Mr. Reno. And you can give a written request to waive those fees.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. We have 1380 Howie Road. And this is Ms. Zander as well.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is the third time I think the committee has had these applications in front of them. I see the staff's request for an adjournment. We would like to proceed to a discussion today and hopefully a decision. The reasons for the adjournment seem to be a requirement for a phase 2 environmental site assessment, which is underway, and some comments on the MRIA report. And so all of the studies and reports that were submitted have been reviewed by staff. We have comments on most, I think, but they've all been addressed as recommended conditions in the staff report. So we're hoping that the committee will consider moving forward with these applications, and my clients can address the responses to the staff comments through the conditions of consent approval. So we would prefer to move forward rather than adjourn this set of applications again. Thank you.
Could I hear from you, Mr. Left?
So our staff concerns are primarily, as Ms. Sanders stated, with the MRIA and the phase 2 ESA. So while we've included them as conditions, our concern would just be that those 2 reports could potentially come back with recommendations that could alter how the lots are configured, which may not be possible if it's approved, and then the studies come in and say something different. So we would want to see those reports before moving ahead with approval here, just in case the lots need to change from the way that they are now.
Would those reports apply to all of the lots or just some of the lots?
They could potentially apply to all of them or some of them, but we don't know until we see the reports.
Okay. Panel, any thoughts, comments? Mr. Otto?
Yes, Ms. Sander, I guess I thought I heard you say that they have had the reports. Have they not possibly had time to review them? So I guess that's a double-sided question for both you and Mr. Teef.
Yes,
And
through you,
if they have been received, how long would it take them to look at them and make a decision? So possibly we could do this in February or January.
So through you, Mr. Chair, I think the applications were adjourned a couple of times because staff had not had time to review, even though the applications were submitted in early August. I think we have received comments on all of them. As I said, the phase 1 environmental site assessment triggered a phase 2, and that is underway. The comments on the mineral resource impact assessment we have received and are being reviewed. The applications include 2 new lots, one of which is already developed. There's already a house on that lot. So I guess the conclusions of those 2 reports may affect the boundaries of that lot, but realistically, that's an existing building, an existing dwelling with private services that's already there. The other application is for a new lot. So, you know, we have shown a building area that's beyond the required setbacks in the official plan policies. And, you know, obviously I can't say for sure, but fairly confident that the responses we can provide will support the 2 severances. So I believe we'd like to proceed. The property owners, Tom and Lois Carroll, are also here and perhaps would like to respond if that's okay with the chair. Thank you.
Yes, if the property owners wish to comment, that would be fine. We could hear from them now. I don't think they're in the room. Are they on the Zoom or whatever we have here?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. No, our existing dwelling here, I don't believe it's going to affect it. And the 5-acre parcel, it's at the other end. It's 3/4 of a mile away. It's a vacant lot. I can't see a phase 2 environmental even impacting it at all. Like there's houses built 500 feet away from that lot. So I don't think it'll make a bit of difference, but that's my opinion.
Can we approve one and not the other? Is that possible? Or do the reports apply to both? I think I already asked you this and you said they could apply to both.
Do you mean approve one study and not the other, or approve one lot and not the other?
One lot.
I don't know if I can speak to that.
Okay. Ms. Chandler?
I'm going to presume that Ms. Zander has reviewed the comments that have come in on the MRI and the ESA.
Yes, I have.
So do those comments apply to the creation of both lots? Or is the phase 2 ESA only applicable to one lot or the other? And the same question for the concerns or comments related to the MRIA.
I guess the comments apply to the entire land holding. As I said, one of the lots is already developed, so any concern with the ESA, that there's already a house and a well and septic there. So I'm not sure what impact any further analysis of the ESA, the environmental site assessment, would have on that existing house. The size of that lot really doesn't matter. The house is already there. That may have an impact on the creation of the new lot, but as Mr. Carroll said, it's a long distance from the site that's being studied in that environmental site assessment. I think my opinion as a professional planner, I think it was the chair who asked, can you make a decision on one application and not the other? I don't see any reason why you could not do that. As a planner, that would be my opinion. They're 2 separate applications under the Planning Act, so you could do that.
Agreed. So we keep talking about the house that's existing, but there's gonna be a building envelope on the retained lot too, correct?
No, no,
No?
no, there's nothing on the retained lot.
Only on the other
So-
5 acre lot.
So there's a 5 acre lot at one end of the property. And our house is at the other end, like 3/4 of a mile away.
Understood, but you're going to have a retained lot. Would that not be subject to a building envelope at some point?
Well, maybe at some point, but it actually, we won't be able to because it's beside a dump. So we won't be able to be that close. You have to be so far away from a dump. It's an old dump, but we gotta be 1,500 feet away from it. That's where we are.
Ms. Zander, could you explain to me what happens to the retained lot? It's just sterile?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think the intention is to rezone the retained
Yeah.
lot to use it for more commercial and industrial land uses. That's the discussion we've had with staff over the years, so not to be used for residential purposes.
Anything further? No? Mr. Verver?
Just a quick question for Ms. Zander. Is there urgency to these applications? And I'm just wondering if we just wait and get those final responses to the city's concerns, like it doesn't really affect the timing of it, right? Because you're gonna have to wait anyway before you can move ahead with your severances.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I would think the Carrolls will tell you they'd like to get on with this. We understand there's conditions to be addressed, survey and responses to the comments. They've been working with me for more than 3 years, trying to get these applications approved, but perhaps Mr. Carroll would like to respond on the urgency of this from their family's perspective.
Well, the 5 acre parcel for sure, because we have to get a road built there before we can build a house there. So that's time again,
For your daughter.
it's for my daughter, but anyway, it's time. You gotta get a road plan and build a road, and then they'll let you build a house.
So if we were to move ahead with this and the conditions were amended, for example, to provide that the phase 2 ESA and MRA were to be to the satisfaction of city planning, if we made sure the conditions reflected that, would that be acceptable? I
believe that's how the conditions are written, are drafted already, yes.
So I guess just to simplify, you're willing to take your chances.
Well, yes. I'm very confident there'll be no problems with it.
Okay, thank you.
Can I have your comment, planning on that idea, please?
So again, just our concern would be, regardless of whether the retained land is being used for a non-residential use, would still be that we'd want to ensure the lot is developable, which the ESA would likely show whether or not that's possible. So I believe we'd still want to adjourn it to allow us to see that report first.
Any questions or comments, members of the panel?
Well,
Sorry,
are you able to do the one lot? Or not, you're preferring you do nothing? I'm only guessing it's probably gonna be,
well,
another month of your Christmas, it's probably gonna be February or March.
we talked about one lot and I asked the planner about that. And if I recall the response, it was that these reports could affect both lots. Am I correct, or is that wrong?
That is correct, yeah.
Yes, Mr. Verver.
Mr. Chair, it seems to me that it's like ultimately up to the applicant if they want to proceed or not. And in this case, the applicant seems pretty confident that they can meet those requirements. So with the conditions worded the way they are, that it's to the satisfaction of the city, the applicant is taking the risk. And if they can't satisfy those conditions, then they'll have to amend their applications and come back. But they seem pretty confident that they can meet those conditions. So I'd be in favor of just moving ahead with the application, because ultimately it is sort of the applicant's call, I think, in this specific case.
Can I hear from planning again about meeting the conditions, I guess?
So I believe the conditions would likely stay the way that they are.
Right, we wouldn't have to amend those.
No.
Okay. Any questions? Let's hear it. Okay. You want to hear the application, the details of the application, or are we okay to deal with it as is? Yeah. Yeah, I think so. Okay, if Ms. Zander, if you'd like to proceed with the application, that would be good.
Okay. Are you going back to the beginning of the agenda or are we proceeding now?
Well, we're here and we sort of talked about this and maybe we could just deal with this right now.
I would appreciate that. Okay. If your staff have the ability to just put up the severance sketch, that would be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So the
Sorry,
sketch
can I
as you,
interrupt?
yes,
Sorry,
of course.
can I interrupt? I'm advised that there hasn't been a signed posting declaration.
Yes,
Mr. Chair, I believe your staff
Yeah.
have that.
yes,
Yes.
I sent it yesterday.
Staff has that? Okay, I'm sorry to interrupt. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So as you can see on this sketch, the purpose of the application is to create two new lots. One, which I'll start with what is labeled here as proposed severance 2 on the south side of the property, fronts to Howie Road, and that contains an existing dwelling with private services that is occupied by Tom and Lois Carroll. The second application is to create a new 5-acre lot in I'm going to say the northwest corner of the property. It would be accessed by an extension to be built from Bear Hill Road. And so that lot is vacant. As you heard Mr. Carroll say, the intention is to construct a dwelling for their daughter. There are natural heritage features in the middle part of this property. As you can see on the sketch, there were quite a few studies and reports done to speak to this set of applications, including, as we've heard, a phase 1 environmental site assessment, and a phase 2 is currently underway. Mineral resource impact assessment was completed and we have received some staff comments. There was a noise study completed, an environmental impact study, of course, for the natural heritage features that you see, and a planning report from my office. The retained lands are intended to be used for a commercial industrial kind of use. You can see there's kind of a gray circle entering the site from the left-hand side. And in the legend, you can see that's labeled as a waste disposal site. So that is what Mr. Carroll's referring to when he says that it would be difficult to put a dwelling on the retained lands. There is a former waste disposal site, and that is the parcel that is the subject of the environmental site assessment. So that will make residential development on the retained lands very difficult. The intention is to use it for commercial, industrial kind of purposes. I don't know if I have anything else to add. The mineral resource impact assessment speaks to the mineral extraction designation at the north side, as well as to an aggregate operation that is south of Howie Road. So that was the purpose of the MRIA. As I said, proposed severance 2 is already developed. So I'm not sure what conclusions could come out of the MRIA that would affect the ability to sever off that existing house. And the 150 meter setback to the ME2 zone at the north end has been shown on our sketch, and there's still room to build on that future lot and respect that required setback. So I'm happy to answer any questions. And of course, the Carrolls are here. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Lana, have you got a response to that?
I believe we don't have anything to add on top of what I had mentioned for the adjournment request. So
Okay.
no further comments.
Members of the panel, any comments, questions? Ms. Chandler.
My first question relates to the retained land. There is a condition that says, well, in short, retained lands meet zoning bylaw or zoning bylaw amendment. Is that to prevent residential development on the retained lands? Is that what that expectation is?
I believe that's the intention, yes.
And then my second question is relating to probably more for Ms. Zander. the mineral resource impact assessment, the comments you received from the city, I presume, I'm hopeful that they are more a refinement of the MRIA rather than something that could actually impact, rather than concerns about the impact of this lot on the existing mineral extraction zone and its potential to expand.
Yes. Excuse me, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, there's 5 or 6 comments that we received from staff on the MRIA. They have to do with showing adequate buffering between the mineral operation, the mineral aggregate site and the proposed development, some clarification of some official plan policies, and the comment on the potential for this new house, should it be approved, to impact the future ability of the pit to expand. So based on my understanding of the pit operation that we're talking about and the author of the MRIA, I'm pretty confident, I believe Mr. Carroll is as well, that those comments can adequately be addressed and will not affect the proposed size, the 5-acre lot that's being proposed. So I believe those can all be addressed by the author of the MRIA.
Okay with that?
It's, well, the first answer I'm satisfied by. The second one concerns me somewhat in terms of it being still open-ended on whether this 5-acre lot would actually have an impact on the future, on the ability basically of extraction to occur within the boundaries of the mineral extraction zone. Is your MRI author available, Ms. Zander?
I don't think he's part of this discussion, if that's what you mean. It was Patterson Group that completed that report.
Okay. I guess that, you know, we've dealt with this before about new residential lots being created adjacent mineral extraction areas. And I don't have my hands on that report right now. And I'm a little bit concerned that that's still an outstanding comment. Are their planning or the staff able to give me a little bit more information on that?
So Tracy, with the natural resources, we were going to take 700 feet off of the pit licensed area. That was correct?
Yes. So I'm not sure if the staff would mind putting that severance sketch back up. It's probably kind of helpful, but the pit that we're talking about is on the north side of Bear Hill Road. So it's at the top of my figure. You'll see where it says mineral extraction ME2. So that's the pit we're talking about. The aggregate material that's closest to Bear Hill Road has either been extracted or there is no more material there that's worth extracting. And as Mr. Carroll just said, we started the process with the Ministry of Natural Resources to remove some of the aggregate license from the lands that are closest to Bear Hill Road because there's no material there to extract anymore. And so the thinking we would be able to demonstrate a greater setback to the license. So there is an aggregate license there, but there is no material for hundreds of feet. Again, I think Mr. Carroll said 700 feet. I can't remember the exact distance, but we started the process with the ministry to remove the aggregate license designation from the first 600 or 700 feet going north from Bear Hill Road because there is no material there to extract. So your question, Member Chandler, about the creation of this lot affecting the future extraction of those lands on Bear Hill Road is not a concern for me or for the author or for Mr. Carroll because there is no material there. It's already gone.
Yeah,
okay,
it was
that helps me a lot.
It was 700 feet, Tracy.
Right.
So just one quick follow-up question. Is that lot under the control of the Carrolls also?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm good.
Any further comments or questions, members with that? Can we deal with this or do we reserve? What are your thoughts? Okay, proceed. To Grant? Grant? Yeah. Okay, I've talked to panel members and we're prepared to grant this request. Subject to the conditions, which I understand that the conditions as stated, you fully agree with. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Very good. Thank you, everyone.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Mr. Chair, I would just note too, like not all of the conditions apply to each lot, right? So we'll have to just make note of that.
Well,
Because I don't think the road opening application would apply to the existing
no, but
house.
planning,
So
I think planning's gonna deal with that. Is that correct,
Yeah.
Mr.?
Yes, that is correct.
okay.
Okay, so,
Okay.
sorry, is somebody adding something?
Oh, I was just gonna say thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you very
Thanks.
much for taking part. Appreciate it. We'll go back to 36 Cherry Drive. It's item number 3. The agent is Todd Sinkler. Is Mr. Sinkler with us?
Good morning, Mr. Chair.
Good morning. Good morning. Finding there are no concerns, I understand on this. Is that correct? Yes. Okay. And Mr. Sinkler, the applicant agrees with the conditions as requested, I understand.
I do, yes.
Yes, okay. Are there any other comments that you wish to make?
I would like to comment about the requirement. I agree to do condition number 5, which is adding to title the requirement for noting that there will be noise from Main Street. But it seems I would strongly recommend that planning take a look at this. It seems very redundant to be telling someone who is potentially building or buying a lot that there's a Main Street 500 feet from a lot when they're going to be buying it. They know that there's a Main Street there. So we will do it because that's what is requested, but it seems very redundant telling somebody and warning them that there's going to be noise next to them. So.
All right, but you don't object to that. You're
No, we will do it because it's easier to just do it than fight planning on it.
okay. Any comments, members of the panel? Ms. Chandler? Yes, go ahead.
It seems that environmental noise component and the request for it to be the notice on title is the only part of the conditions that is going to have to go through city legal. Is that correct? Perhaps Mr. Teef could clarify that for me.
Yes, I believe so. That's the only one that'll have to go through legal services.
I would be in favor of removing that clause or that condition. I agree. I don't think it accomplishes a lot, and I think it's a fairly onerous piece to add on top of a fairly simple severance application.
I would agree. Thank you, member.
Well, we haven't agreed yet.
No, I'm just saying that I agree with her. My apologies, Chair.
That's fine. Any other comments, members? Mr. Vervoort?
While I understand the concern with putting that notice on title, my position always is if the parties already have agreed to this and this is supposed to be fast tracked, I don't know why we're revisiting the issue. Because the applicant has agreed with planning, and when the parties agree on something, I'm not sure that it's worthwhile for the committee to question that or upset that if it's a fairly straightforward matter. So I would impose that condition because the applicant did indicate to planning that he agreed to abide by that condition.
Other members, comments, questions?
Yeah, seeing as how we're commenting, and I'll comment it too. I agree with Jocelyn that it should be struck because the applicant did say he had agreed to it, but only because he has to get it done. And it keeps, I've seen some legal things now where the city to get some of this stuff through is fast tracked and it costs another $5,000 for outside lawyers to do this. So I think it's an unnecessary condition and we should strike it.
I don't know about the $5,000. Any other comments or questions? Yes, please go ahead, Ms. Anderson.
I'd be curious, from the planning department, why this, condition was, placed on the application.
Thank you. So my understanding is any application that involves a new lot next to an existing source of environmental noise, be that a main street or industry or something of that nature, we ask for that to be put on title. So because this one's near Stittsville Main Street, it's not directly on the street, but it's in close proximity. We're asking for this to be put on title.
I had asked of
With all due
planning-
respect, I think it's
Sorry.
a little far-fetched of a condition. Stittsville Main Street, but, so I do, agree with, Jocelyn and, Autumn.
Planning.
So I just wanted to add, so under the official plan, we actually require a noise study for the creation of a new lot. And so this condition was put in instead of a noise study. It's a little
Okay,
less
so-
intensive of an effort to do.
Yes,
So that's why we're requesting this in this case.
so, that sheds a different light on it if the official plan is
My apologies.
requesting something. So I retract my comment.
Any other comments, members? All those in favor of passing it as is?
Oh, as is.
As is.
With the conditions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
well,
as
that's
is.
it. That's it. As is with the conditions. We all agreed? Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Sinclair,
Thank you very much, Chairman.
with the conditions. Yeah, last item is 5260 Long Island Road. Yeah, you too. Okay, planning doesn't have any concerns, I don't believe, is that correct?
That's correct.
That's correct. Okay, would you like to give us a brief overview, if I could put it like that? Could I have your name, please?
Absolutely. Through you, Mr. Chair, my name is Gabby Scollin. I'm from Foten Planning and Design, representing the applicant.
Thank you. Would you like to go ahead, just a brief overview, because we don't have a lot of problems with various conditions and things like that.
Absolutely. May I please request that the PowerPoint be brought up to slide number 5? Or the last slide. Thank you so much. So we are here today to discuss one of the conditions for consent that arose from the approval of the application in 2021. So this condition recommended that a grading and drainage plan be completed. Through the completion of this plan, it was recommended that easements would be created in order to contain all drainage onto these individual lots, thus not providing any offspill onto any of the neighboring properties. So in consultation with staff, they recommended that we have 4 individual easements. So you can see them on the slide here. I've color coded them just for a little bit of ease. So we have parts 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I'd also just like to note it is a little bit confusing in this application because we have 2 different reference plans, each using parts 1 through 4. Would you like me to go through each individual easement?
Well, there doesn't seem to be a concern from planning. I don't think that we need to occupy your time, but there were some comments made. Is there anyone present in the room who would like to speak to this matter? I see a hand going up. Would you like to come ahead, please? Maybe you could sit in the chair over there and turn on the microphone, please.
Hi, I'm Wellen Wong and I am owner of 5263 Long Island Road, which is across the street from the development.
Yes.
So one of the things that was brought up by a neighbor of ours on the other side on Driscoll.
Who's that neighbor?
Glenn, I don't know his last name.
Glenn Condren?
Yeah.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, so I think he had some comments that he wanted to say. I'd rather not speak to him about that, but I want to make sure that those comments are read through as well.
Okay.
But I guess for me, it's more down by, I guess it's, can we have the slide up again? The one that you prepared?
Which slide would that be? I don't know.
The one that she had just had up.
Oh, that.
Yeah, that one.
Okay.
I just wanted to know, am I reading this correctly? The parcel 3, the red or the pink down there, is that on Driscoll? Is that?
Maybe you could answer that, please.
Thank you. All of the easements are located on the properties themselves, so they are a portion of the parcels. So Driscoll Drive is on this far side and Long Island is on the top of the graphic there.
Oh, okay, okay. I was trying to read that from back then. Okay, so my only concern is there's no indication on there of some of the century trees that are on that property and how that affects those easements or not. And whether like there's a maple on that property that's quite old, but there's also two pine trees which are closer to Driscoll. And yeah, I just wanted to know if I mean, you didn't put it on there, so I don't know how that affects the trees at all or not. And these trees, by the way, are at least 300 years old.
300.
Yeah, and I would say that to just add another 5-year-old or 10-year-old tree to each lot to replace some of these trees is not really even addressing half of the biomass that those trees give us.
Is your concern that the drainage may be affecting those trees? Sorry.
The drainage actually could help with those trees. I'm just thinking like the easements might actually help preserve some of those root zones. So if you are putting in easements, I just want to know if that's like how it's affecting those trees, if it's maybe a positive thing that they can add in with those trees, because you know right now on the island, and this is because I'm a landscape designer and so that's my profession, is the white pines are actually they're very healthy compared to some of the other properties. And I think it has to do with the fact that they were tapping into perhaps the existing septic bed that was by there. So when the development does happen, we're hoping that the root zones of some of these trees, and in particular, I'm just saying the pine trees, but there is also a maple up there on the end, that they would be protected in a way that you wouldn't have any equipment run over it or any storage of things like heavy things in the drip line. But I think the easement, that's why I'm wondering why those trees are not included in the easement study.
Well, this is an easement for the drainage.
Yeah, because I think it could actually help those trees, but
Right.
depending on how it's done.
I'm not sure what you'd want us to do.
So-
We can't control the equipment that is going to be used.
You normally would put a snow fence around these areas of root zones where
Yeah, but that isn't something that,
no, but I'm just saying if they are gonna be doing the drainage or having those easements, are those easements going to be dug out? In which case they would affect the root zone? Are they just gonna be parceled off so that you wouldn't actually disturb that portion of land? Like I'm not sure what this tells me is what I'm
so you're
asking for
wondering
clarification.
how the easements are actually going to be
Yeah, yeah,
incorporated on the
yeah.
land. Okay, there's a gentleman here who'd like to speak.
Okay, sure.
Can I have your name, please?
Yes, thank you. My name is Jacob Bolduc. I'm also with Foten Planning and Design.
Okay.
I can speak to that quite directly, actually.
Okay,
So,
if you would, please, sir.
yeah, so the reason it's actually taken us some time to get here, the original consents were approved in 2021, is that there was actually a long iterative process between the civil engineer designing the grading and drainage plan and the arborist that was retained to prepare the tree information report that was also required as one of the conditions. And a large part of that back and forth was to preserve these trees that are being discussed. There are retaining walls being constructed in order to divert the water away and protect critical root zones at vulnerable areas to make sure that they're not overwatered. I'm not going to speak as an arborist, but I can tell you we've had 7 versions of our TIR completed. And the latest note is specific to the fact that this final version of the TIR was developed according to the final grading plan in order to preserve the trees as indicated in the original condition of approval. So we've done an extensive amount of work, both at the civil and forestry level, to preserve those trees and direct the drainage as recommended by both professionals.
Okay, that's already been done. Does that assist you?
So where is that on this plan? Like, we don't have any information that we can look at to see where those retaining walls, which need a base and need to be dug down in order to support these retaining walls, where are they going to be located?
So the retaining walls will be located on the grading and drainage plan, which was submitted to staff and was worked on with staff over the last couple of years to work towards a point where they were satisfied. And the drainage easements as shown on the R plan, that's simply a draft reference plan for the purpose of showing where the parts are going to be located from a legal perspective. It doesn't have the trees on it. It doesn't have the retaining walls on it. It's to be read in conjunction with the drainage plan, which again was submitted and would have all that information you need. I would be happy to send you a copy of that grading and drainage plan directly, along with our copy of the TIR. That'd be no problem.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be great because I can't really comment on anything or know what is going to be going on in those, I guess, strips of what you've said, until I've actually looked at those.
Sure. Well, you will have them shortly, I guess. Is Mr. Condren online? Obviously, he's not here. Yes?
I don't believe, sorry, I don't want to speak on behalf of the committee, but I did reply to Mr. Condren's email yesterday with some preliminary responses to his questions.
Yes.
Very similar questions to what we just heard. There was also a few about, for example, the eaves troughs and where they will be directed.
Yes.
The comment that I had provided in response is that I don't believe through this process we can impose design conditions, but I would note that on the grading and drainage plan, there is a note that eaves should generally direct the flow to the front or rear yards of these lots as per the recommendations of the grading and drainage plan.
And, I take it he's not online here today.
He is online, Mr.
He
Chair.
is online? Okay, that's good. Thank you. Mr. Condren. Can you hear me, sir? I can't hear you. Could you turn your volume on?
There, can you hear me now, Mr. Chair?
I can hear you now. Have you any comments you'd like to make?
Yes, I do. If you hear me out, please. First of all, thank you for allowing this appearance, and I would like the committee to know that I have submitted some concerns, and Mr. Bolduc was kind enough to reply to those concerns, so I would like to thank him for those as well. I guess one of my primary concern, well, first of all, a question that Wellen asked, and I'm not sure we got an answer, was, are these easements just the easements, or are they actually going to be dug and they're going to be recessed easements?
Mr. Bolduc, are you able to assist us on that?
Thank you. There is a various design of the easements. Part 3, which is the southernmost easement along Driscoll Drive, that one will be a swale that is dug, whereas the other 3 will not be.
Is that helpful, Mr. Condren?
Yes, it is very helpful.
Good.
My first concern is that I live in 5295 Driscoll, which is adjacent to the property on the southern property line. Currently, that parcel of land seems to have two grades. One is where it goes from the top of Long Island down to Driscoll Drive, and the other is where it goes from, I would say, north to south. So there's a lot of runoff into my property and the adjacent property. So I have a few concerns. One is that there is not a before and after assessment of volume of water and flow of water and where that flow and volume will go. So I know the intent is to take all the water in towards the ditches, but if that's the intent, I'm not sure that the drainage plan currently does that. So I have concerns about being able to assess the the volume of water and the flow of the water between what's existing now and between the result of this plan. My next concern would be about spring runoff, and if the easements are dug, will this take the entire spring runoff down towards the ditches? Because currently between part 4 and my adjacent neighbor's property, the spring runoff comes and pretty much delivers a very large amount of water into our backyards. I can't see that being mitigated by these easements, but perhaps I'm mistaken. My third concern would be about the ditches themselves that they're running into. Currently, there's flooding at the southern corner on Driscoll Drive in the springtime and in heavy rainfall. And that flooding is sufficient enough that the kids in the area skate there in the wintertime for enjoyment. So it's a fairly large area. The ditch on Driscoll Drive has shallowed. It's not sufficient for current runoff. There's no ditch, practically speaking, on Long Island Drive. So the runoff there creates trenches. It's hazardous to walking. I know that might be an issue for city staff, but it is a concern. My adjacent neighbor just to the south of me is also concerned about flow of the ditches. And if the intent is to take the entire runoff, including the amount that comes into our backyards, to the ditches, we fear that there's going to be an increased risk to flooding. And then I guess my final concern would, well, I have two more actually, is to the packages were shared by Mr. Bolduc, and I very much appreciate that. I had them yesterday, so I was able to take a look at them last night. The tree information report does detail the very large and mature trees that are on the southern property line between us. But that easement, the shallowed one, will bring more water to that area, which is already subject to flooding. And I don't see how that area will not be weakened as a result of this plan and put those trees at further risk. And again, Mr. Bolduc, thanks for sharing the TIR. There's there's another 3 trees that are on the southern boundary that aren't identified on the TIR. And I don't know what the easement will do on the southern boundary for those 3 trees. There are 2 cedar trees and it's another fir tree, I believe. And they're currently behind my shed. I have a shed on my property and these trees exist behind those shed and they're not part of the TIR. And I just think with in part 4 of the proposal, with the terraces and the grading that's going to occur in that area, and the fact that there's no easement on the southern property of part 4, I don't know how that will not create more water flow into my backyard and into my neighbor's backyard. Anyway, unfortunately, you know, I'm not a water engineer or survey engineer, clearly. And I've had a couple of days to review those, but I would say those are my concerns. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. Bolduc, can you answer all or some of those?
I'll do my best to recall all the questions, but again, I did provide written answers, but to sort of supplement those and walk through it. My understanding is that whenever you're doing any form of development, especially infill development, the developer would be responsible for the pre and post development flow. Essentially, that there is the amount of water that would be shed on the existing lot, and there's a certain let's call it a natural right to shed water on neighboring properties through the existing condition that's been there for over 100 years. And then when you alter the lands, you are responsible for either improving or maintaining that existing condition. Essentially, the pre and the post have to match. So I do not necessarily believe that having gone through this exercise with our civil engineer, as well as our arborist, and as well as the review that would have been completed through the city's infrastructure department, that this development will result in additional impacts on adjacent properties. The grading and drainage plan is specifically designed to take the additional runoff that would be generated by the hard surfaces and direct them towards city infrastructure, meaning the roadside ditches. I cannot speak to specifically the adequacy of those ditches. That's not identified on the plan, but what I would assume safely, I believe, is that municipal staff would have evaluated that capacity as part of the development of this grading and drainage plan to ensure that there are no further impacts on city infrastructure. If those ditches are, and I would agree that the one on Long Island is a little shallower, but it does run downhill. So I think it's more to direct rather than retain. Whereas the ditch on Driscoll is a little deeper and includes culverts under the driveways to allow for natural flow. So as part of the development of that grading and drainage plan, it's specifically not to exacerbate any existing issues on adjacent properties. And I would hazard to say that the goal of a grading and drainage plan is to improve over the existing condition. So that is my answer to that. With respect to the trees, again, the retaining walls and the terracing and the recommendations by the arborist to make sure that those trees have the best possible conditions as a result of this redevelopment. Those were done in conjunction with the grading and drainage plan. So again, it was an iterative process of back and forth to come up with the best, most acceptable solution. And that's where we've landed with city staff. So my understanding is that staff in the infrastructure department are okay with the grading and drainage plan that's been provided, and that we've also received approval from the infill forester with respect to our TIR. I think that generally addresses the question. There was the discussion about why is there no easement on the rear side of part 4, which would be the northernmost property, basically the property at the top of the hill. It's my understanding through the grading and drainage plan that the other easements are essentially directing the downward slope towards Driscoll, and therefore there's no easement required on part 4 because nobody is draining over part 4. The water is coming from part 4 over the other properties, and that's the purpose of the drainage easement.
I understand from what you said that your plans, the various plans and studies that you have are to ensure that no other property, that there's not further water imposed on any adjoining properties. Is that correct?
That's correct. The goal is always to try to mitigate as much as possible. But my understanding is that it's not acceptable and staff would not approve a plan like this. And our engineer would also not submit a plan that did not control for the pre and post development flow.
Okay.
So we can't say we're going to make it better, but we can certainly say we're not going to make it worse.
Yeah, so I think from a legal point of view, if you make it worse, the landowner is liable for perhaps damages or whatever, has to correct it.
I'm not a legal expert, but that's my understanding.
Yes, okay. Mr. Condren, do you have any follow-up points?
Well, I don't think lot 4 drains solely to the ditch on Long Island. I think lot 4 also drains into our backyards. And once there is housing there, the snow has to go where the snow would be on that part of the property previously would have to be someplace else, and it's likely going to be in the backyard. So I would think that it could increase flow into my backyard and the adjacent backyard. Sorry, my first comment should have been, I think the principles are well placed and extremely laudable, but because there's no water flow assessment pre and post, I mean, I don't know if we're able to tell whether there's going to be more or not. I'm just looking at it from the point of view of, you know, there's going to be housing there, there's going to be terraces, and there's going to be drainage walls that are going to direct water away from Long Island to the back of lot 4. And with no easement there, it's going to increase flow into our backyards, because already lot 4 already comes into our backyards. It's not going to direct the water to Long Island. I mean to Driscoll, sorry. The other thing I was asking was about the 3 trees that are behind my shed.
We have dealt with that. We have dealt with that.
Pardon me?
We have dealt with the trees at some length.
No, there were 3 trees that were outstanding. They weren't on the TIR, so I don't know if they're considered within this easement plan and whether they're going to continue to exist or not. They're not. Mr. Bolduc was kind enough to send the TIR as well,
right?
And the TIR did not include those 3 trees, so I don't know what the future for those 3 trees is.
I'll ask Mr. Bolduc to comment then.
Okay, I can address, I believe there's 2 items there. One, with respect to the trees would be identified on the original plan of survey that was completed. And then that's what's given to the arborist to complete the tree information report. There's certain parameters surrounding trees. They have to be of a certain diameter in order to be considered significant trees. So not all trees would necessarily be captured, is my understanding. If those are significant trees, then we could look at them. But my understanding is that through their field analysis, there's a few trees, for example, that are identified here on the survey that I'm looking at and are in the TIR, but are not necessarily in the table because they're not identified as being significant. So I believe the significant mature trees that were discussed at length, again, just to reiterate, are ensured to be protected. If there's any shared trees on the property line, once again, they cannot be removed without explicit permission of the neighboring property owner. But I'm not seeing any potential conflicts there. With respect to the easement on part 4, perhaps I can clarify that the easement, we could not put an easement from a legal perspective on the back of part 4 because there's no one that it's in favor of. Again, this is water draining from part 4 down south towards Driscoll. But what I believe you're asking is there going to be part of the swale located on part 4? My understanding through the grading and drainage plan is that the water would be directed to primarily Long Island as much as possible, and that's again why there's a note on the grading and drainage plan about directing eaves towards the front or the rear, not towards the sides, because that's closer to other adjacent foundations. But basically what I'm saying is that on part 4, Any water that would drain naturally onto adjacent properties would continue to do so per this grading and drainage plan. It would not increase, but we can't put an easement because there's no party that the easement would be in favor of. Again, it's water draining away from part 4. So the swale could be located on part 4, and I believe that's the intent, but there would be no need for an easement.
Glenn, do you have any comments?
I don't have anything to add to that. No.
Okay, thank you. I see that we had I guess an email from Mr. McGregor. Is he online now? Does he wish to speak to this? No? Okay.
If I may, Mr. Chair,
I'm sorry?
if I may add another point.
Well, we've had points added, and from what I hear from Mr. Bulldog, he's answered those very thoroughly and given you the documentation and copies of the studies that answered it. Planning has no problems. One more point, and then that's it, please.
Okay. The 3 trees in question in the document that I received, the criteria for establishing whether a tree would appear on the TIR or not is whether or not the tree was to the height of the chest. And then there was no criteria about the diameter of the tree. These 3 trees are at least 15 feet tall, 10 to 15 feet tall. That's my additional comment.
Okay, thank you. Okay, members of the panel, any comments or questions? No? Can we deal with this now, or do we need to reserve? Can we deal with it now? Yeah. Deal with it now?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, my only comment was that I feel that the applicant has done everything possible to try and mitigate these effects.
Yes.
And I have confidence in the plan that's been prepared and reviewed by the city, so I'd be in favor of the application.
Okay. So we're all in favor then, members of the panel? Okay, approved. Thank you very much. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
No further items? No. Okay, meeting is adjourned then. Thank you very much.